Okay, what is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have another update on Afghanistan, and this is probably the worst update yet. Afghanistan has now entered South Vietnam mode. This is South Vietnam 2.0. In just the last 48 hours, the Taliban have captured 9 provincial capitals and have taken over 3 entire provinces of Afghanistan. The situation is so bad that the US is redeploying at least 3,000 troops to Kabul province in Afghanistan. According to them, they're doing it to help facilitate the speed up of the withdrawal of both the US armed forces in Afghanistan and the civilian contractors that are also stationed in Afghanistan. The situation is so bad that the Afghan government may collapse. According to the US, the Afghan government, Kabul, may collapse within the next 90 to 100 days. So let's get into this. On August the 11th, on the morning of August 11th, the Taliban forces captured the provincial capital city of Pul-i-Alam, which is the capital city of Baghlan province. Population 58,000. The province fell after just a few hours of fighting and was one of the first capitals to be captured on August the 11th. Not only did the Taliban capture the provincial capital of Baghlan, they also captured numerous towns and villages during their offensive. As of now, the Afghan army is only in control of just 6 towns in the southern half of Baghlan province, the provincial capital, and all of the towns north of the town of Dushi have been taken by the Taliban. On the same day, the Taliban took over the provincial capital city of Faizabad in Badakhshan province. Population 44,000 civilians. The battle lasted about 10 hours in total, but it was the second city to fall on the same day of August the 11th, 2021. This leaves the Afghan army only in control of just 2 small towns at the southern border of Badakhshan province. The town of Karanwan Mojan and the town of Sher-e-Mojan, along with the Karanwan Mojan airbase. The Taliban now control 98% of Badakhshan province on the border with Pakistan and Tajikistan. On the same day, August the 11th, the Taliban took over the provincial capital city of Farah and Farah province. Population 54,000 civilians. Not only did they take over Farah city, they also took the remaining towns and villages and the airport, the main airport / airbase, the Farah airbase. They took it all in just a few hours of fighting. On August the 11th, the Afghan government forces in Farah city were forced to retreat to Iran. They surrendered to the Iranian forces. They fled to Iran and gave their weapons to the Iranian forces at the border. This leaves the Taliban in 100% control of Farah province. And it just keeps getting worse. The last provincial capital city to fall on August the 11th was the capital city of Samangan in Samangan province. Population about 10,000, the smallest provincial capital to fall on that day, and the last provincial capital to fall on August the 11th. Not only did the Taliban take over the provincial capital of Samangan province, they also took over at least 90% of the northern half of the country, cutting off the Afghan forces in neighboring Balkh province. So now the Afghan army in Balkh province are now cut off and surrounded, isolated in the north, along with the provincial capital city of Mazar-i-Sharif, one of the last cities left in the northern half of Afghanistan, along with the city of Mayamana in Faryab province. So that ends it for August the 11th. The Taliban captured 4 entire provincial capitals in one day. They also took over the air bases in these cities, the cities of Farah and the airbase in Faizabad. They also captured the airbase that was left in Kunduz province. There is almost no more air bases left in the north outside of Mazar-i-Sharif and Mayamana. It only gets worse. On August the 12th, the next day, the next morning, the Taliban took over the provincial capital city of Ghazni in Ghazni province, the capital of Ghazni province, population 190,000 civilians. They took it in just 5 to 6 hours of fighting in the early morning hours of August the 12th. Not only that, but they took almost all of the towns and villages in this province. The Afghan army only controls a meager 7 towns and villages in Ghazni province. 7! And there are 2 other villages in the north that are under assault right now. What makes it even worse is that Ghazni province is only 90 miles away from Kabul. So the Taliban forces are inching their way to Kabul, just like the North Vietnamese did in the Vietnam War when they were inching their way to Saigon. On the same day, the same morning, the Taliban forces took the provincial capital city of Herat in Herat province. Population, more than 590,000 civilians in Herat city and Herat province. Not only that, and they also took over the second air base in Herat province, the Shindad air base, all in the same morning. On the same day as the city of Ghazni, 2 provincial capitals with over 600,000 civilians captured in just the morning hours, the morning half of August the 12th. Afghan forces in the city of Herat were forced to flee to neighboring Iran, just like the Afghan forces in Farah city the previous day. It only gets worse. At this point, the Afghan army in Herat province only control a single town, the town of Garuzara, and they control 1 additional airbase, the Herat International Airport, along with the Herat Industrial Zone. So the Afghan government are only in control of 3 small areas that are clustered together. The other 95 to 98% of Herat province is now under Taliban control. Every town and village outside of this pocket is under Taliban control. And it just keeps getting worse. The biggest blow came in the afternoon of August the 12th. The Taliban forces captured the provincial capital city of Kandahar in Kandahar province, population over 200,000 people, between 200,000 and 650,000 people, depending on sources. They took it in just about 8 to 9 hours of combat. The leaders, the military commanders in Kandahar had to flee. They took their military vehicles and fled, abandoning the civilian population to the Taliban. It was sad. People in Kandahar were posting videos on social media showing how this is their last day of freedom. They're now going to be under Taliban rule. No more secular democracy. You're going to be living under the Sharia, is what these people were saying. Fearful. I couldn't blame them. I wouldn't want to live under Sharia law. And it gets even worse. Literally just a few hours after the fall of Kandahar, on August the 12th, the city of Lashkargah in Helmand province, the provincial capital of Helmand province, Lashkargah fell to the Taliban. The Taliban captured the last 2 areas, the Lashkargah police headquarters, the prison, and the airport. They were all captured after the Afghan forces in the city surrendered to the Taliban. There's videos online of Afghan soldiers submitting to the Taliban, saying the war is over for them, and that other Afghan forces should surrender. Horrendous. And at the very end of August 12th, the Taliban captured the final provincial capital of the day, the provincial capital city of Pul-i-Alam, the capital of Badghis province, population 64,000 civilians. They also captured this and the remaining 5 to 6 villages. In one day, the government forces in Pul-i-Alam either surrendered to the Taliban, and those who refused to surrender fled to the neighboring countries. Those who refused to surrender fled to neighboring Turkmenistan, leaving the entirety of Badghis province under Taliban control. A nightmare. And it's not even over yet. Going back to Helmand province, the Afghan army only controls 2 army bases now. 2 army bases and a dam. They control the large military base of Camp Sharabak, the army base of Camp Dyer, and they also control the Kajaki Dam in Helmand Province. Everything else in Helmand Province is under Taliban control, just like in Baghuz Province in the north. And it's not over yet. It's still not over. Right now, as I speak, the Taliban forces are attacking the provincial capital of Tarin Kut in Uruzgan province. This is the last area held by the Afghan government in this province. There is a big battle happening right now in Tarin Kut. Tarin Kut has a population of 71,000 civilians. It is the last area. This area might fall by the morning of the next day, for all we know. To make it even worse, the Taliban have already stated they plan on launching even more offensives this week, and they're already doing it right now. As I speak, as I'm speaking to you now, the Taliban forces have launched an all-out invasion of Lagar province, and they have taken over most of the towns and villages in this province, with the exception of the provincial capital, the capital city of Pul-i-Alam, along with several army bases and a few small villages. Outside of that, almost the entirety of Lagar province is under Taliban control. In the province to the north of Lagar province, the province of Wardak, the Taliban forces control like 75% of this province and are already attacking the provincial capital city of Medan Shar, which is almost surrounded now. Both Lagar and Wardak are right next to Kabul. So if these provinces fall, the Taliban will be at the gates of Kabul province and Kabul city, the largest city in Afghanistan by population, that is. This leaves only Kabul province, Bamiyan province, Panjshir province, Kapisha province, Kunar province, Kandahar province, Khost, and Paktia province as the only areas in Afghanistan that are mostly under the Afghan government's control. There are several other provinces that are partially under the Afghan government's control. The province of Ghor, the provincial capital city of Ghor, Changcharan, is still under the Afghan government's control, but most of the towns and villages in Ghor province are now under Taliban control, with the exception of at least 5 or 6 towns and villages. In the north and Balkh province, the provincial capital city of Mazar-i-Sharif is still under the Afghan government, along with at least 40% of the province. So outside of these areas, and a few other smaller areas, the Taliban now control at least 65 to 70% of Afghanistan's territory. What a nightmare. Afghanistan has now entered South Vietnam mode. It's a ticking time bomb, a clock, before Kabul falls. If you ask me personally, I don't think Kabul will fall in 90 days. It might last to the end of the year. It's a pretty large city, and most of the Afghan army is in and around this area. If you ask me which province will last the longest though, I would say the provinces of Bamiyan and Panjshir will probably last the longest, as those are the Shiite-held areas of the countries. And those areas are like 90 to 95% secure. Taliban only control maybe a few small areas along the border regions with the neighboring provinces, most of which have already fallen, with the exceptions of the provinces in the south near the Pakistani border. So I honestly think that Bamiyan and Panjshir province, which are like 90 to 95% under the Afghan army's control, will be the last holdouts. Just like you had parts of Afghanistan that were still holding out against the Taliban in the first Afghan civil war of 1996 through 2001. So I honestly think those areas will outlast even Kabul. But what do you all think? What do you all think of this disastrous situation? Afghanistan has now entered South Vietnam mode. This is South Vietnam 2.0. The Taliban are inching their way to Kabul city. The situation is so bad that the US is now sending troops back into Afghanistan, mostly to secure Kabul province, but we'll see. But for now, this is J-Man Time signing off. And this is literally Vietnam 2.0 in Afghanistan. See you next time.